I had heard about this Kaspa industrial initiative. I think it was Shy who had posted it that I saw. It's very interesting looking it over. It seems like the ideas are, RWAs, decentralized finance, stablecoins on Kaspa, cross-border payments, and supply chain. So it just seems like an advocacy group that could be, really amazing. I'm going to pass it over to Kaspa Kai first.
Kaspa Kii.
Hi guys, it's Rory here from the team. I was just happened to have picked up the X account and just saw you guys were live, so I thought I'd listen in. But what you guys were just talking about in terms of industries looking at different blockchains in the past and finding them not to be a correct fit is exactly where we've come from. Um, we started a project late 2015, early 2016 in the energy sector, and we thought DLT technology would be really, really useful. And at the time, we invested more than $12 million in this particular project for energy transactions and reconciliations for cross-border trade. And the biggest issue we had at the time was well, there was quite a few, but we kept revisiting it many times over, and we discovered early last year Caspa, and spent some time looking at it quietly in the background and how it could work. And we saw that there wasn't smart contracts or layer twos or anything like that available at the time. But we thought that the base technology in and of itself was super interesting, and we have a number of interesting projects that require a DLT solution at scale, and that's the key word, and the key word being scale. That we want to do, and because of the nature of these systems, and projects, they're quite global. We wanted to make sure that we had something that was completely decentralized so that we could have censorship resistance, which is a very important aspect when you're trying to do something at a on a global basis, where you don't want individual governments or bad actors to interfere in the project. We don't want to have centralized control, again because of the global nature of the transactions, and then scalability. In many cases, we struggled with the scalability. The energy sector is one of the most valuable sectors on the planet. And if you consider, just for emissions trading, for example, and the value of that market by 2030 is valued at $2 trillion a year. So, and the underlying assets themselves are extremely valuable. So where we came to is we launched an initiative for emissions trading last November as part of DII, the Desert Energy Network, and I'm on the board there, as is Paul Van Son, our chairman. And we we were looking at building our own bespoke block DAG, and we finally just came to the conclusion that, well, let's just use Caspa. It would assist us, immensely. But there was lots of other things, because energy underpins the entire platform. It's a proof of work, so it requires energy. Energy is a factor of the security. And for us, that's very important, because if we're thinking of tokenizing a green hydrogen facility that's worth $1.5 billion, we want to make sure that the underpinning security of that tokenization is absolutely immutable. And then if we're talking about transactions at scale across multiple different ecosystems, or a continuously traded market like electricity, where the balancing and rebalancing occurs every 15 minutes or so, we need to have the ability to scale. And similarly, if we go down to the domestic level, where there's smart meters, those smart meters generate petabytes of data. Most of it is just excrement, but the bits that we do need to act on and transact on require a certain degree of scalability. So Caspa fits the bill very nicely. So we have this network, the DII Desert Energy, and Paul Van Son, set that up 15 years ago. It's actually It was our 15th anniversary there a couple of months ago, and what we learned from that was we were able to take initially a whole bunch of German industrial companies, and at the time promote the concept of using renewable energy and energy from the deserts as a way of powering them in the future. And 15 years ago, the cost of solar was literally the most expensive source of energy on the planet. It was very niche, it was very difficult, it required huge amounts of government subsidy. And in that time, in that 15 years, we've now seen, and we've gone through several phases. So there was Desert Tech 1, Desert Tech 2, and now DII, Desert Energy, which is phase 3. And we're moving into other things like green hydrogen and green ammonia and uh, just generally zero emission technology. But we've overseen and brought a huge number of large industrial users, not just in energy. And if you look at the DII alumni, you'll see everybody from banks and law firms and insurance companies and big oil players, renewable players, manufacturers are all part of this alumni. And what we wanted to do was, well, we've succeeded in building this network of networks. And DII, by the way, it's an invite only network. So we only invite companies in if they sort of meet the same long term vision that we do, and then it's only for their C-suite level executives and up. So it's only for the real leaders. So discussing with Paul Van Son, we decided we could do something similar with Kaspa because we both really liked the technology. And after I met with Shai in Dublin, and we were discussing some of the industrial use cases for Kaspa, we agreed that, well, it could be really a good idea to set up a foundation specifically for promoting the use of Kaspa in industry and then to act as a market enabler for Kaspa, not just for energy, but starting with energy because that's what we know, but we also know lots of other things. We know how to build shipping companies. We know how to build large pieces of infrastructure. We know how to build high tech electronics. So let's take the model that we developed in DII, Desert Energy, apply it to KII, irrespective of industry, and then, as I say, act as a market enabler to allow the global adoption of Kaspa by industry generally, and we do that by doing a few things. One is to assist companies in understanding what Kaspa is and what it means for business. The second aspect is not just the educational part. It's actually offer practical assistance. So one is what we're actively setting up at the moment is we're convening a regulatory roundtable group of eminent experts from the EU, United States, and MENA region to discuss how can we make sure that what we're doing is regulatory compliance, so we don't end up with these sorts of situations with the SEC or with nonsense, spurious regulatory barriers. So to make sure that we overcome them, particularly if we look at stable coins and things like that. And what we also want to do is, because we have this deep regulatory knowledge, which comes from the energy industry and from the financial industry that's associated with it, we have all of these experts on top, and we want to assist the Caspa community, and we've done so already. So we've had some discussions with some really interesting projects that are coming out of Kaspa KFC20 projects, and we've already offered that. We've already given some advice and guidance on how to scale and how to deal with those regulatory aspects. And then the final part is we want to practically assist projects. So we're working on establishing a Kaspa launchpad. And part of that launchpad is we'll take a Y Combinator type model. We have two VC funds that have already committed to financing it, and the ticket size is anywhere from 25,000 up to about $2 million worth of financial support. We're not quite ready to take in projects yet because we're still a team of we're 10. We're now almost 12 people, and we're growing. We're growing pretty fast. But we want to take those in a Y Combinator style, but make sure that the projects that do launch from the KI-enabled launchpad, that they're fully KYC'd, that the teams are completely fully doxed, the projects are audited, and if necessary, the projects are also insured, so that we launch in a safe ecosystem. I suppose you could maybe describe it as like the iOS Apple system, where there's a little bit of a walled garden around the projects that we launch out of it to ensure that we don't damage the image of the Kaspa community or the Kaspa ecosystem by having rug pulls or by having spurious or dangerous projects in the ecosystem. So our involvement is to push Kaspa into industries where we know that there's solutions. And then when it comes to things like we're looking at how best to launch a stable coin, for example, on Kaspa in the Kaspa ecosystem, that's fully regulatory compliant from day one, and we have some interesting initiatives around that. And then to further reinforce what we're doing, we're holding our first conference event in September in Dublin, called Kaspa in Enterprise, and the whole focus of that will be to reinforce why Kaspa, why we think it's good for enterprise, why we think it's scalable, why we think it's good for financial services, why we think it's good for logistics, why we think it's good for X, Y, and Z. And we really love what the guys have built. We think we can help do it, and that's just a little bit about our journey with Kaspa and KI. We also have a couple of other interesting projects. That would rival some of the things that Ripple are doing with XRP and Hedera are doing on the financial services side of things as well. So quite a few of the things we won't be talking about publicly because, or certain partnerships we won't be talking about publicly because of non-disclosure agreements and commercial sensitivities. But where the projects and the initiatives we can talk about, we certainly will, and we'll be shouting them from the rooftops. But this is the first actual public forum that we've actually spoken in. But some of the team will participate a little bit more as we're getting more settled into our new roles. So hopefully that gives a little bit of a background to what we're doing.
Yeah, so essentially you're trying to bridge enterprise and industry into the blockchain space. Can you expand a little bit more on why you think Caspa's block DAG is the best network for that to happen?
Yeah. So suddenly my phone has just decided to go on speaker. So just give me a moment. Yeah. So we evaluated a lot of different blockchain projects over the years, and we created a highly comprehensive evaluation rubric. Um, and what it came down to in the end was the trilemma being solved. So the security, the efficiency, the energy efficiency for sure. That was a big one for us. Security was the second. Speed was the third, and then decentralization. We feel is very important. Particularly for some of the applications we're interested in deploying and supporting. We're not a particular fan of proof of anything rather than proof of work, because of the general centralization effect.
Yeah, no, that's a great perspective. Really, and anyone who's in the audience who's really curious about what Caspa KII or Kaspa Industrial Initiative is talking about, please check the Nest. I linked their website there. It's very interesting. Went over everything that the gentleman on the panel just explained. And I'll just say from the Wolf team, we're very honored that this was the first public, discussion about your space or about what you're doing. And definitely come back and give some more context. Really interesting what you're working on. Christian, what's up?
Yeah, just one more question for Kaspa Kai. If you had to list out the five biggest enterprise applications or industrial applications that could be approved from some standpoint of efficiency in the blockchain space, what would those five applications be?
Energy for sure. Supply chain. Public sector, definitely, and cross-border payments, and settlement of contracts within the financial industry. So I spoke with the digital assets manager of a major financial institution about 2 weeks ago, and they manage between 20 and 40 billion, or sorry, 20 and 40 trillion worth of customer assets on an annual basis. And within their digital management team, they're currently doing 95% of the settlements on Ethereum. And I asked them just roughly what the volume of transactions would be, and then just from the gas fees alone, they would be saving tens of millions a year just by transferring over to Kaspa.
Thank you for providing that color.
Yeah, no, this has been an awesome space. Really great all the way around. Great context. Thank you for coming up here, Kaspa Industrial Initiative. And Kaspador, it was great to hear from you as well. You guys were great additions to the panel. Always awesome to learn more about Kaspa.
Yeah, I think this space took a very unexpected turn to Kaspa Industrial Initiative, and I think it was incredible. I was not expecting that, and I've learned some very exciting nuggets, I'll say. And I'm going to go through the recording of this and shoot out some tweets of what was quoted. So thank you, Kaspa Industrial Initiative, and Wolf, thank you as well.
Thank you so much for coming, and thanks everyone for attending, everyone on the panel. Give these guys a follow, and I'll see you next time.